This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. 5 years ago, deep in a bear market, a group of traditional finance experts founded BitGet, and they've been building ever since. Now, with 20 million users worldwide, BitGet is committed to helping users trade smarter by providing a secure one-stop crypto investment solution with copy trading, future trading, and spot trading. Your security is their priority, and BitGet has one of the largest protection funds in the industry, with US $300 million to cover potential trader losses from unforeseen events that are not due to misconduct from the user or platform. BitGet wants to inspire everyone to embrace Web3, so if you're new to crypto, learn more at the BitGet Academy with free blockchain courses, crypto guides, cryptocurrency trading strategies, and more. Or for the experienced investor, trade smarter with daily access to institutional-grade crypto market intelligence and trends analysis with BitGet Research. I've put links to BitGet Research and the BitGet Academy in the show notes, so get amongst it or simply go to bitget.com. Thank you to BitGet, and now it is on with the show. My guests today, we have two guests. They are Gennaro D'Urso. He is the founder at the Pharma Collective, or Pharma DAO, and we're also joined by Isreal Mirsky. He is the director at the Pharma Collective / Pharma DAO. Welcome, gentlemen. What we'll do is at the beginning of the show, I always get guests to just introduce themselves. It's always good to get a little bit of personal and professional backstory. Love to learn what you've been doing in the lead up to really getting involved and founding and directing the Pharma Collective. So, Gennaro, we'll start with you. You're the founder. Yeah, just love to hear a little bit of your story.
Sure. So my background is that I'm a scientist, worked for about 30 years primarily as a research scientist. I ran a lab in University of Miami for many, many years. Worked for a Nobel laureate during my time. We did a lot of work in the cell division cycle area, which led to an award in 2001. Since that time, I really worked on a number of projects, but more recently, in the last 10 years, was an entrepreneur, started a company called Genetic Networks, which I'm also the founder of. And with that team in place, we have been trying to do our part in changing the way we go about getting pharmaceuticals. And along those lines, Pharma DAO was created, Pharma Collective, in order to use decentralized tech in order to develop, produce drugs in the public interest. So that's basically my background.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Isreal, over to you.
Sure. So I'm originally a computer scientist. I had a whole career in the advertising universe. I used to run the Intel business for Omnicom for about 4 years, spent the better part of $1 billion for Intel, and went on to run global technology for OMD, which is one of the largest global advertising media agencies. I then left and ran strategy for a startup in the pharmaceutical psychedelic space called Wisana, where I first got a lot of exposure to all of the ways in which the current ecosystem is broken. And I met Gennaro a little under a year ago. I had been working previously on some other projects in the Web3 X pharma space. But when I met Gennaro, it became clear that the vision here for really fundamentally changing the pharma ecosystem was one that was very exciting. And I joined, and we've been working very hard to make it a reality.
Fantastic. So I suppose at the beginning, maybe we should just briefly make the distinction or understand that there is, the Pharma Collective and the Pharma DAO. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I presume that the Pharma DAO, as a decentralized autonomous organization, the idea is to build a treasury to fund the goals of the Pharma Collective. But is that how you guys think of the distinction?
Yeah, I mean, I could take that question, Andy.
Please.
So basically, when this was formed some years ago, around the time of the pandemic, Pharma DAO was the first entity that was discussed on several podcasts, et cetera. But the idea at that time was to try to take advantage of what decentralized tech can do to bring people together as a collective. That morphed into a model that at the time I created because I thought was really needed. We had nonprofit organizations taking literally hundreds of millions of dollars during the pandemic and not doing a lot of effective work in saving lives. And so I thought it was very inefficient. So the idea of the Pharma Collective sort of sprouted from the initial thoughts of Pharma DAO. Pharma Collective is a 501c3 non-for-profit. It's completely above board and done out of the state of Virginia. It's been already created. And what I like to say is that Pharma DAO is sort of the infrastructure that runs the treasury for the foundation. So it's got all the aspects of being a normal 501c3, except for this very unique quality that there's no employees in the foundation. It's clearly autonomous. So unlike many DAOs or decentralized autonomous organizations that have a centralized figurehead, the foundation we created has no figurehead. It's completely autonomous in that sense. And then it ties into a treasury that's on chain. That would be the ultimate goal, and that this money can be voted on by all treasury owners, which are all members of the foundation, which could literally be an infinite number of people. So now you're taking a situation where you're going from treasury directly to the most important part, which is working with for-profit companies that can actually do the things we're pursuing, in this case, producing pharmaceuticals. So it's, I think, a very interesting model, one that's not really been explored before. And for lack of a better term, I've been calling it the collective protocol for building a non-for-profit entity. So there is the reasons why we have sort of two names. The Pharma DAO component is the infrastructure. The Pharma Collective is just a classic 501c3 non-for-profit organization.
Yep, got it. Thank you so much for the distinction there. I think it'll be useful, gentlemen, then if we just kind of, backtrack and come at this from the beginning again, which really is just to understand, I suppose, some of the problems and issues with Big Pharma. Obviously, we could do we could write books, we could write novels, we could run podcast series, we could talk forever, but just from your particular perspective, so Gennaro obviously can see that you've been kind of working in genetics and healthcare for over a decade, and Isreal, will come to you as well. I want to hear a little bit more about the psychedelic component of what you were talking about. But Gennaro, let's just stick with you. So you did mention also what was happening during COVID, but from your perspective, what is the problems with Big Pharma specifically, and then we can kind of talk about what some of your solutions could be.
Yeah, sure. So I want to really phrase this properly. The problem is not necessarily with Big Pharma, but it is certainly with us, and we suffer the brunt of that problem. So Big Pharma has really looked at this as a business opportunity for over a century, I would say, at this point, and it just grew into this system, which basically is very straightforward. Venture capital funds biotechs. Biotechs build drugs at about a 90% failure rate. And when those drugs actually make it, they're typically bought out by Big Pharma to make billion-dollar sales, so they get the profits they need to maintain the infrastructure they've created. And that infrastructure continues to get larger and larger with time. And therefore, you just get this worsening of the effect. When I noticed this very early on because I worked for Big Pharma for many years as a service provider and was watching this unfold. But I think the pandemic, which you mentioned, really crystallized it for me, because during that time we were a profitable company. We identified drugs that were very valuable, we believe, for helping save lives during the pandemic. And so many of those were generic or off patent. We had done this by repurposing the drugs. And it was really frustrating to find out there was no way to take those drugs to the public. That's what really inspired me to write my own, manifesto on what I thought was the problem. And that ultimately led to me discovering the Bitcoin solution, in a sense. That when I met some people from Bitcoin, they kind of explained to me what DAOs were, what decentralization was. And then we started to see how this could ultimately be utilized. So the problem with pharma is very simple. Their model is really built on new drug discovery and new drug presentation and marketing and distribution. And they get those new drugs from the biotechs that are in bed with the big pharmas to sell their companies to big pharma as their primary goal. What Isreal and I are now working on is really trying to change that equation to say, let's build an ecosystem where manufacturing facilities that are much smaller than big pharma can actually contribute to making drugs that people need, essential medications, those that are in short supply, or quite frankly, to repurpose medications that already exist to other indications where they can be useful. And I believe that's an amazing market to enter, but also one that can really benefit people. So we say this is in the public interest. We're not looking for billion-dollar, net sales here. We're looking for basically making things affordable and available, quite frankly, to everybody who needs them in the world. So that's sort of a mix of everything. But yeah, the big problem with pharma is that they have a great model for them, but it isn't particularly good for us.
Got it. Thank you, Gennaro. And look, Isreal, I'd love to hear your perspectives on the challenges or issues within big pharma, and not to go too far down a sidetrack. But yeah, I mentioned the psychedelic thing that you mentioned, which is obviously part of the story as well, I'm sure.
Sure. So so I was working for a company called Wisana. We were studying a combination therapy of CBD and psilocybin as a treatment for traumatic brain injury. And it is a very promising area of research. I believe that psychedelics are going to change psychiatry fundamentally. But one of the things that really became clear for me as part of that process was how difficult it was to drive for public health outcomes with substances that are off patent, as psilocybin essentially is. So, despite the fact that drug in particular has been used in both ceremonial and now psychiatric sort of dark contexts since it was made illegal in the 60s, it proves extremely difficult to assemble funding for organizations to drive that through the FDA approval process, because nobody can make $2 billion a year of patent protected income for 20 years on a substance that is generic. Now, and this is the case for many, many drugs, right? There are 10,000 plus drugs that are generics now that are generally recognized as safe. They've made it through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials. And many of them are what we call low-hanging molecular fruit, right? They were early substances to be synthesized. Many of them are simpler molecules. There are lots of things that they are doing that, or they could be good for, that are not what they were originally studied for. But because nobody can make that kind of unicorn money from them, no one in the ecosystem will touch them. All the money in the pharmaceutical ecosystem flows downhill from the major pharmas, and everybody from the venture folks to the smaller companies, everyone is trying to make drugs that will ultimately be sold to one of the big pharmas and generate that kind of unicorn income. That means that the kind of drugs that get studied and approved are very different from the kind of drugs that we as the public need in order to drive the kind of public health outcomes that we really want to see. So, a couple of years ago, for example, 2/3 of the drugs that were approved were cancer drugs that extended life by weeks to months. And that's the case a lot, right? Because those are the kinds of drugs that health systems will pay for, because people at the end of their lives will pay virtually anything for a little more life. But that's not how you're going to achieve longer life, higher quality health outcomes, more quality adjusted life years for the public at large. A lot of that is going to come from medications that don't look like the kinds of medications that are unicorns.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, Gennaro, if the mission is, Pharma DAO was created as a response to the monopoly of big pharma, to escalating drug prices, and the mission is to develop affordable drugs. What does that process look like? How can you allow for, DAO-based, community-driven decisions on drug development and production? What would that vision look like?
Yeah, so that's a really important question, Andy, to clarify, because one of the most important things about Pharma DAO and Pharma Collective is that the community is not involved with decisions on how to make drugs, what drugs to make. It's basically giving the okay to a production of something that's already been tested, potentially even approved by a for-profit company. There are several companies I know of in my space, and I'm going to be one of those spaces where it's manufacturing drugs. And those companies tend to be on fairly low margins, typically not big margins like pharma. They don't have the bankroll to produce marketing, budgets like big pharma can. So they've been somewhat limited to move even a simple drug from an off-label to an on-label. So what we're doing here is allowing the community, when we realize there might be a shortage or a need for something in a rare disease, for example, that we could try to look for those opportunities. And when we find them, let the community be involved in, let's say, a phase 3 trial that might cost a relatively small amount compared to a new drug discovery, and get it done. And when it gets done, the benefit here is that the for-profit company that takes the lead, because that's what they know what to do, they can give a royalty back to the treasury. So we built into this system not only a donation capability, but also a capability to greatly expand the treasury by having relationships built with for-profit companies that the community trusts. And those for-profits can make a profit on these type of discoveries, as Isreal mentioned. They may not be as billion-dollar discoveries, but they could be millions of dollars of net profit, and they could share some of that profit directly back to a treasury. That would allow a sustainable model, economic model, for this DAO to exist. That's not just dependent on donation. So I think this is a really powerful approach to get rid of the middlemen and the bureaucracy that allows a direct connection between community and the people, quite frankly, that get the job done.
And do you think that community is important? Do you think that, the idea of a DAO having these communities that can be involved in the process, like in this case of the funding and development of essential medications, taking it out of the hands of, I guess, just a small kind of centralized authority, but taking it back to the people?
I absolutely agree with that. But what the people are doing predominantly is controlling the treasury to fund.
Yes.
That's the primary role of each and every member, and each and every member has one vote. I don't care how much money you put into the treasury, you get one vote. This is a completely democratized, distributed organization under the umbrella of a legal 501c3, so that there's no issue of having a legal contract, either a smart contract or otherwise, with a for-profit company that has to be held accountable. So I believe this model provides incentives to be aligned in the right way so that everybody can gain from this. And I think this is really the hallmark of the idea of the collective protocol, is that everyone has a role to play, but the for-profit companies that actually manufacture and make drugs, that's their role in life. That's what they do best.
Yes.
So the community can't be involved in that, but they can be involved in identifying a need. And that need could be brought to the board. That's all volunteer. And then we could pursue whether the community really wants us to pursue that type of requirement. And if we find something that is relevant and can be produced, the community can vote on it. And then, again, the board doesn't make the decisions. The board can validate a proposal in different ways and then present it for a vote to the community. So I think it's a very simple model, but also very elegant in a way that this sort of transforms nonprofits in a way that, not to my knowledge, has never really been done before, but should have been done.
And Israel, what do you think are some of the the first strategies or the low hanging fruit, if you like, the first opportunities that Pharma Collective could make a difference? Like I suppose one example could be, taking advantage of drug repurposing. Looking at repurposing of patent drugs for new therapeutic users. Is that an option? What are some other potential strategies?
Certainly. So the absolute lowest hanging fruit it comes even before repurposing. It's probably manufacturing support. So, there are, for instance, cancer drugs for children that are currently in incredibly short supply. Insulin is a drug that has been consistently in short supply and stretches in the U.S. recently. One of the things that Pharma Collective can do is to de-risk the manufacturing of some of these substances and indeed to encourage their manufacture by subsidizing it and then again receiving a royalty from the sale of the resulting drug. I think that will allow us to have an impact on the U.S. public health system very rapidly going forward. The second really exciting opportunity is this drug repurposing. So to sort of walk you through the process a bit, what we can do is we can take an existing generic drug that has an alternative indication that we're highly confident it's going to be effective for. And there's a few ways that we can validate that via the board, of course, in the existing body of research, ways that it's being used effectively off-label in the existing marketplace, as well as using AI or other screening tools like the proprietary technology that Gennaro and his Nobel laureate co-founder developed, GeneScape, which uses yeasts to help to screen drugs for efficacy in humans to identify which generics are very, very likely to be effective in human beings for those alternative indications, right? So now we've got a generic drug with a highly promising alternative indication. Now, because it's a generic, it's already been through phases 1, 2, and 3 of FDA approval for something else. And what that means is we don't have to do phases 1 and 2 again. We don't have to prove that it's not toxic in animals or human beings. All we have to do is prove that this drug is useful for something else than what it was originally approved for in the form that we submit to the FDA. So we can run just a phase 3 trial on that drug for an alternative indication. And there are tool sets for doing that more and more inexpensively every day with remote medicine delivery, et cetera. So we run that phase 3 trial. And then from the FDA, we can get something called a 505(b)(2), which is essentially a special patent that the FDA will grant for manufacturing that generic for that indication for a period of 3 to 7 years in that form. And with that, we can make potentially tens to 100, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars from the right generic with the appropriate affordable pricing regimen. That allows us to create sustainable revenue streams for this model, for this development effort of drugs in the public interest that can be applied over and over and over again in the generics and repurposing space, as well as being applied over time to things that are even further back in the discovery and monetization pipeline. You may have heard the term DeSci used in the context of some of the work happening in this area. We really consider ourselves D-Dev because the part of the ecosystem that we are focusing on and playing in is that taking a drug through the latter phases of trials and into distribution and into the marketplace. That's where we really feel that we can specialize and make the most impact on public health and indeed demonstrate the impact that decentralized technologies can have on the wider world in an extremely concrete way.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Israel. And I wonder, would collaboration with small pharma, people know what big pharma is, but what about small pharma? So, perhaps partnering with some of the smaller, more nimble pharmaceutical companies who would be more willing to accept or negotiate on things like potential rev share models, things like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, everything that comes through, as Gennaro was saying earlier, everything that comes through the DAO and through the collective is going to be spearheaded by an existing small pharma company. They're the ones doing the work. We'll help to an extent, but essentially our role is to create a funding and de-risking model that allows projects that live in this space in between the few $1 million payback and into the hundreds of millions, but below the unicorn range to exist. Without something like this, there just aren't the funding modes to get it far enough into the marketplace where it can start showing profit and have the kind of public health impact that we'd really like it to. So we absolutely need to partner with small pharma in order to make this a success.
Yeah, and I'm just to add one last thing there is that I'm actually actively putting together a guild in a way of small manufacturers. Every manufacturer I have gone to is 100% behind this and enthusiastic about the possibilities because, to be quite frank, these are usually private companies, even in some cases family owned for decades, that don't have a path typically to make these billion-dollar type deals. That's not what they do. They love chemistry. They typically do something very important in the marketplace, making essential medications, sometimes, as Isreal pointed out, for children who have a desperate need for these with leukemia. When I started finding out that we have a shortage of many of these drugs, this really resonated with me and the concepts that were being created. And I really feel very passionate about this idea of bringing these smaller companies online and getting them the marketing they deserve. So people understand that they exist and are important and they should not be destroyed as they have been in many years past. They many times just get taken out of the equation by the larger companies. So that's got to stop because we need them.
Yeah, what is that kind of environment like at the moment, Gennaro? Because I can imagine with kind of the advances in technology, I'm sure there are multiple examples of smaller companies with laboratories working on some fairly cutting edge medicines, but I guess the pathway to getting those to market is still reasonably fraught. But just love to get your thoughts on kind of the cutting edge of I guess medical science at the moment, and whether there are the right pathways for getting some of those drugs to testing and to market.
Yeah, it's again a very good question because I've been in this now for some years, but what we're finding out is that these manufacturers have been really squeezed very hard by PBMs and the middlemen and insurance carriers and all that. So in some cases, they've been literally taken advantage of to the point where they've owed money back after manufacturing drugs for some of the big carriers and distributors. So this is a problem that really needs to be solved because a lot of this expertise is being lost. For example, the largest facility of generic drugs in the country was closed during the pandemic by Upjohn, which is a subsidiary of Pfizer. That's a fact. And they closed a 1 million square foot facility because they felt it wasn't profitable enough. And they donated it to a university where it's now sitting as a mothball facility that was making thyroid medications. So we start to see a real problem emerging here. And when I talk to facilities, they really struggle to make decent profits. But a lot of the time they're using antiquated technologies. So now we have things like continuous flow manufacturing. We have ways to do things with robotics that could clearly make a huge difference, but we need investment in that area. And most of the time, the investment goes to drug discovery companies to make drugs to sell to big pharma. So they're not really investing in manufacturing facilities that could be revamped into something modern. We're trying to change that with what we're doing, but others I know are starting to move in that direction. One of my colleagues is Rick Bright, who worked in government. He is a big advocate for continuous flow manufacturing, has helped companies get started in that direction. And I think we're going to see a big change in the next few years as more and more of these companies start to realize there are more efficient ways to make drugs. On top of that, if we could repurpose drugs, that could be a whole new market. So I think this is an exciting area to explore in the future.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And look, just to clarify, I think Gennaro explained this earlier, Isreal, but maybe let's get your take on it. So the idea with the DAO is, there's a community-governed treasury that votes on funding proposals. But the DAO is funded by, some donations, but also investing in for-profit companies. And that would eventually, if those companies do return a profit, create a kind of a self-sustaining model that pays the treasury and that funds the DAO over time, right?
That's correct. The only tweak I would make is not so much investing as striking licensing agreements,
sure,
royalty agreements with those for-profit companies.
And that model, Andy, has been tested before with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and it yielded a return of about 10x on a $200 million licensing deal. Exactly what Isreal said. It wasn't an investment. It wasn't equity. It was non-dilutable. But it came back as a royalty, and they gave a $3 billion check to a small board of 10 people, which is highly centralized. This is something we're trying to change. So we know the model works. I knew that model very well back in the day when it happened. I just wanted to spread it and distribute it among the community so that potentially hundreds of millions of people could benefit from that return rather than just a few people on a board of a non-for-profit.
So what are the next steps, gentlemen? Look, we can hear from you both, but what are the next steps that need to happen for you guys to really start fulfilling the potential here of the Pharma Collective?
Well, I think the next steps, and I'll have Isreal certainly fill in from his Web3 experience, but from my point of view, it's really about doing a proper launch of the Pharma DAO Pharma Collective, getting the word out, getting people to understand what we're trying to do here. Number one, realize that it's 100% decentralized, autonomous organization. So no one is gaining from this monetarily. This is a really important fact that we need to drive home, that this is a collective, a true collective, that everybody has an equal vote. Everybody can contribute whatever they feel comfortable with. If that's zero, you still get a vote. And that means everybody can be involved. And once that happens and we start getting input from the community, we can find the ways that we can improve medicines for all and hopefully someday move beyond medicine and do the things that are really essential for people to live healthy, long, prosperous lives. So in a sense, the mission here is really to change the way non-for-profits function as a whole. And I think this could be applied to many of the non-for-profits we see today and do a lot better job of using efficient mechanisms for bringing value back to the people that are actually donating to these groups. As far as next steps go, Isreal, I have a lot of trust in him as a Web3 expert in bringing teams of folks together that are helping us with the launch and getting this put together in the right way and testing it. I don't know, Isreal, if you'd like to add a few words as to what we're planning for the next few months. I'm hoping to get something really launching in the first of the year. That first quarter is when we're really focused.
Yeah. So we're knitting together some tool sets in order to drive the V1 of the Pharma DAO platform. We are trying not to reinvent the wheel where not necessary. The treasury itself and the management of that is, as we've been saying throughout this, meant to be a very thin client. So we'll have proposals for the management of the various functions of the DAO that are instantiated and then regularly renewed. We are, in terms of the stage we're at, we're really at the initial awareness driving stage here. We're bringing people into the project and showing them the potential to really fundamentally change this ecosystem and the way that pharmaceutical development works and who it works for in a very broad way. And I'm very excited about bringing people into that vision and getting them involved in helping to make it a reality.
Fantastic. All right. Well, as we finish off the podcast, just again, please make the case for why people should look at getting involved with the Pharma Collective, the Pharma DAO, and where can people go? How can they keep up to date with what you guys are building?
So from my perspective, I would say it's extremely important that people realize that during the, for example, during the pandemic, I'm sure many of your listeners have had family members or friends have a really hard time during that period. Not everyone, but quite a few people did. I know I lost some people during that period. So when we are looking at big pharma and only looking at big pharma and government to provide our solutions to those problems that might hit us again, we need to have an alternative way to go about this ourselves. I wrote a 9-page document that someday maybe I'll publish, that the conclusion of that was the people have it in their hands. They're capable of making a difference and bringing medications to people that need them. They just have to see a path to do that. And I believe Pharma DAO, Pharma Collective provides that type of path. So please, if you have any concern for having health be number one for people that you love and having the medications we need, please join as a member, get your vote, and be part of the community that really does make a difference and hopefully disrupts a little bit the way this has been operating in a big pharma world for so many years. We can make a difference.
Hear, hear. Yeah, I would say that the core of the issue that we have, the reason that we spend so much as a society on pharmaceuticals is because the incentives in this ecosystem are perverse. And we have in our grasp, through the tools of decentralization, the opportunity to set up an incentive structure that works for us much more directly, and as a collective, as a group, and to make the decisions around how that capital is deployed in ways that serve us and not purely the profit motives. So I really think that this is the moment to demonstrate the potential of decentralized technologies for impacting the real world. And if that's something that and the impact on public health that we can collectively have, which can be absolutely massive, if those are things that matter to you, then come to pharmacollective.io or pharmadao.net and sign up for the Genesis group, and come be a part of the community that has the potential to change the world, perhaps more than anything else in Web3.
Yes, indeed. And look, actually, it kind of does occur to me, gentlemen, that, one result of the pandemic and, a kind of a perhaps global realization that sometimes the answers aren't as easy or as black and white as people might think. And, the situation can change, and you have to kind of change your views as the evidence and the situation changes in front of you. But what I also noticed is there's a lot of, education out there. People are educating themselves in a way that they weren't able to because of there's a number of big podcasters and influencers, and you can kind of there's different narratives on everything from seed oils. Are seed oils good? Are statins good? Even like Oxycontin, that Netflix documentary Painkiller. There's if you want to just be fit and healthy, one of the best ways to stop yourself from needing some of these medications is just to remain fit and healthy and eat sensible food, get sunlight, get some exercise. There are strategies that you can kind of do to kind of help mitigate your reliance on big pharma. Of course, if something will go wrong in the end. I'm kind of making some wide generalizations here, gentlemen, but yeah, just interested on your perspectives on the kind of the information environment that we all live in today as it relates to all of this stuff.
Yeah, Andy, what you mentioned there is very interesting because food for medicine is a very big topic these days in functional medicine, and I talk to a lot of people in that space. I might even be part of a program referring to that. And why that's important is the reason we don't get proof for any of these natural products working as medicines is because nobody is willing to do a phase 3 trial to prove it. Yeah. And when you have anecdotal data to support these claims, they're never proof. But now with Pharma Collective, we might be in a position to actually test the best candidates for this type of indication and proving it with a phase 3 trial. And that's because it's distributed among the Treasury. And one last final thought. If you think the Treasury you don't have a treasury that's being used for this kind of thing. Well, you're wrong. It's called the United States Treasury, and it's called the UK Treasury. 20% of every dollar we give in that treasury goes to this type of work. And a lot of times it's inefficiently done. So we're already paying for this through our own governmental treasuries. We're just saying, let's build our own treasury and have our own voice on how it's used. So people sort of miss that point sometimes, but I think it's something you need to really think about, that we're already using our money to do these things, and grossly so. So we can't do this anymore. It's not sustainable.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, look, gentlemen, it has been fascinating talking to you both today and learning all about the goals of the Pharma Collective and the Pharma DAO. Isreal, do you want to just take us out? Have the final word. Just once again, tell people where they can go to sign up, to learn more, to stay engaged.
Absolutely. So we, of course, have all our socials. You can reach out to us at the Real Pharma DAO on Twitter. But the places to raise your hand to get involved are pharmacollective.io or pharmadao.net, which is the slightly more Web3 focused destination for folks who understand that part of the story. Please join us. The folks who join us now will be part of the Genesis group, and there is a variety of communication and governance opportunities that will be made available to the folks who join us now. And I am really excited to welcome anyone from your audience who hears this and sees the opportunity and sees the potential to change the world and change the lives of so many millions of people, to join us there and get involved.
Awesome. Very well said. Thank you so much, Gennaro and Isreal. All the best, and bye for now.
And thank you, Andy. Okay, have a great day. Cheers, guys. Bye now.
All done.
You mean the toast?
Something tastier. I've just copied an elite trader on BitGet. One click, and it's done.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't have to sit here manually spying on the moves of smart money and crypto and copying them. I just have to click once, sit back, and BitGet does the rest.
You are so lazy.
It's about working smarter, not harder. Copy it until you make it.
Hands off, gains up. Start copy trading on BitGet.
There you go. That was Isreal and Gennaro from Pharma Collective and the Pharma DAO. Absolutely, fascinating. And I think this is definitely the way forward. Initiatives like this, as everyone begins to get more of a say in the potential development of medicine for the good of all humankind. Simple as that, really. Big picture stuff, but so important to the future of the planet. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to the show, everyone. Please do make sure you are subscribed to the Crypto Conversation in whatever podcast app you are using. But that is it for today. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin.